Hi there, in this video I'm going to discuss how to set up your perches and feeders to get great photographs of wild birds. If you've been a subscriber to the channel for a while, you've probably heard me mention a lot of the tips I'm going to talk about in this video, but stay tuned anyway because I'm going to include lots of photos of birds. I got a question about a week or two ago that asked me how I set up my perches for taking photographs of birds, and I had to refer them back to a really old video that was quite embarrassing, so I wouldn't suggest going and finding that. So I wanted to remake the video and update it with loads of new tips that I've picked up since then, so all of the tips were in one place and just help you to enjoy your photography. Behind me here is a garden shed that I converted to a bird hide. Now I did that about 10 years ago, so the shed's quite old and battered. It was a bit of a cheap one to begin with, so I'm about ready for a new one, but it still does the job. Now when I was siting it originally, I did give some consideration to where the sun would be. At the moment we're early morning and midsummer and the sun is almost there behind the camera. In the winter it rises further over to the right and creates some quite nice warm side light on where the perches are. So do give some consideration if you're thinking of doing this to where you put your hide and where the sun's going to be. On the front of the hide here I've got some inserts that I've attached some fake camera lenses to. Now these are just mugs that you can buy quite cheaply, but they get the birds used to something sticking out. They remove, and then behind them there's a shelf just here that I can rest the camera on when I'm taking pictures of birds. I've also got windows here that I can look out and watch the birds. Now one of the most important things to remember when you're setting up a bird feeding station is to keep your feeders clean. Now ideally they should be done weekly or at worst every other week. But it's really important to stop spreading diseases between the birds, that you keep them clean, and it does actually make the birds visit the feeders more regularly. Now you can help yourself with the cleaning process by checking the feeders while you're in the store before you even buy them to just see how easy they are to take apart. Now I've had some feeders that are really difficult and require screwdrivers and all kinds of things to get them apart, which is a real pain, and others that are really designed very well that have quick releases and can be taken apart very quickly. Now I did fall foul of that with a previous feeder that I had. It got a quick release and a squirrel worked out how to release it and empty all of the seeds. So it's not always ideal, but it's much quicker if you get something that's easy to take apart. The feeders are now clean, but it's a really good idea to remember to go and wash your hands afterwards just to be on the safe side. So to start with, I'm going to talk about all the different kinds of food that I put out. In the hide I've got some big 50-litre boxes where I store all the seed. Now if you've got room, it's a great idea to do this because you can buy it in bulk and it saves you loads of money. Now also when you're buying feeders, it's important to remember that there are lots of different styles that are specifically designed for certain kinds of seeds. Now this one here is for Niger seeds. Now I use Niger seeds because they attract goldfinches, but what does tend to happen is when they are feeding, they tend to drop a lot of the seeds. So I fashioned this tray underneath. Now this is just a plastic tray that's very cheap that you can buy that goes under plant pots, but it really does a good job of catching the seed so it doesn't end up building up on the floor. All I did was attach some chains and drilled a couple of holes in the tray to let out the water, and it really does a good job of catching the unwanted seed. Now there are other kind of feeders like this one. This one is used for peanuts, and if you are going to use peanuts, it's important to feed them from this kind of small hole feeder because you don't want young birds getting whole peanuts and choking. This particular feeder is for mixed seeds. Now I use it for sunflower hearts because the birds go absolutely nuts for them. Now this model is supposed to be squirrel proof because if a bird lands on the perch at the bottom, the little hole stays open. If a squirrel lands on it, it pulls down the gate and closes off the seeds. Now that's what's supposed to happen, but this morning I came out and I found a squirrel wedged between the two, somewhere like this, and it was managing to get its feed out of the hole, so it's not squirrel proof. So I'm going to have to relocate it somewhere else, and hopefully I can still use it, but it may have to be retired and I might have to go back to the squirrel cage. What I'm going to do as a result, I'm going to try this feeder on a higher branch that's not as accessible, but I'm sure that pesky squirrel will still manage to get it somehow. Now the next kind of food that I'm going to put out is a mixed seed. Now I'll put some of it on a table and some of it on a ground feeder. Now you might notice that this is not any ordinary bird table because my old bird table fell apart, the top just completely collapsed. So I'd got some old plastic lids knocking about, and so I fastened that to the top, and it does a really great job because it never gets any worse for wear. So that is my bird table, and then I've also got another plastic lid that I put on the floor that I put some more seed on. Again, it doesn't get any worse for wear, and it works great as a bird feeder because you can pay 30 or 40 pounds for something that does exactly the same job. Now the final kind of food that I'm going to put out is suet pellets. Now what I do with these suet pellets is I push it into little holes that I've drilled into these dead trees here, and there's lots of birds that like coming and getting food out of these holes, particularly woodpeckers that come and land on the side of the trees. And because I've positioned the holes on the side of the tree, it gives me a great aspect from the hide to take the picture. Now somebody did once ask me why I push the suet pellets into the holes. It just makes it more difficult for the birds to get out, and they spend more time on the side of the branch trying to get them out. Plus, if you put a suet pellet in as whole, it's gone very quickly, and if you push it in, it breaks it up and just makes it last longer. Now I've got a special tool that I use here. This is an old screwdriver that I just use an angle grinder to chop the end off. So it's really good for pushing the suet deep into the holes, and it does a great job. That might seem like a lot of different type of feed, but it's really important to put out a variety of feed if you want to attract a variety of species of birds. Now the birds are fed, I'm going to tell you about how I set up my perches. When choosing a perch, it's really important to think about the kind of bird that's likely to land on it. Now, this feeder here has got Niger seed in it, so it's going to attract goldfinch and small birds. So I've chosen a small branch that I can put next to it, which will show off the birds better. A really thick branch would dominate the bird and just wouldn't look as good. So the positioning of the branch, what I'm going to do is make it quite high so it's on a level with the feeder. Because what will happen as the birds come in, particularly if the feeder's busy, a bird might land here while it's waiting for its turn. Now what I'm going to do to attach this into this position, I've got some metal posts here. These are garden hooks. I'm going to use Velcro just to tie this on, because Velcro is very, very quick and easy just to attach the twig to, and very quickly it's in position, but it can be changed again very quickly as well, which is more important. Over the years that I've been taking photos of birds, I've come to realise that it's really useful to have a setup that you can move about very easily. When I first started, I had a very permanent setup where I'd got a tree stump buried into the ground with a crossbar on. Now that was very static and very limiting. Now everything can be moved about, right down to the feeder post can be picked up, moved to somewhere else where I need it, next to a perch, but it also has the added benefit of stopping food waste building up underneath it. As another example of portable perches that I use, I've got this tree stump just here, but this one here is probably my favourite because of this circular opening just here. What I do is I put food inside it, and as the birds go in to get the food and pop out again, they're framed really nicely within this circle. I've also drilled holes into the side for the woodpecker. Now the way this stands up, I've just put a cross piece of wood on the bottom, two pieces of wood joined together, and that just makes it freestand. So if I want to move it somewhere else, it's really easy to do. These two bits of tree here are quite useful because they're my main woodpecker tree. Now the woodpecker did just fly past as I was about to start filming this segment. I don't know whether the camera picked it up, but it's really useful. This tree here has always been here, so it's rooted into the ground, so it's very nice and solid. This bit is just attached to the top of this one with cable ties, and I use this because it's got this quite nice branch sticking out to the side. So for the bigger birds like collared doves or jackdaws or something like that, if they land on here, that's really useful as well. Oh, there's a woodpecker now. It's a good idea to keep an eye out for different kinds of perches that you can use. I rescued this old gate here that was about to be thrown away because it's old and battered, but it creates a really interesting perch. I cut the end off, I put a stand on the bottom to make it freestand, and I put a little bit of a trough on the back just to accept some food so the birds get attracted to the top. But that proves really successful, and I've got some nice pictures on the top of here. But also I've tried things like watering cans and gardening spades. So really, the only limit is your imagination. We've come behind the scenes here, and just here is the holly hedge that's next to the hide, but here is my collection of branches and twigs. When I see something interesting, I'll pick it up and I'll bring it back, put it here, and I can use it for future perches, and when I change things out, it just makes things a little bit fresh again. Now it's really important to consider the background to your images. Normally when I'm taking pictures of birds on perches over there, the hedge at the back of the paddock is quite a long way away, so it's thrown out of focus. I might even be taking pictures pointing down, so I've got the grass in the paddock acting as a really diffused background. But that's not always the case. If I'm taking pictures of woodpeckers on the trees, then this background just here is very messy. So what I've got here is a plastic screen that I bought very cheaply from a bargain garden centre. It's just 4 pieces of plastic hedge simulation, so it's got quite a bit of texture, but it's thrown out of focus. You can't tell that it's made of plastic, and because it's on a frame, I can move it about and position it wherever I want it. And of course, if you really want to get creative, you can have a go at building a reflection pool like this. And if you're interested in finding out how to do that, I'll put a link just up here and down below in the description. So despite all of the feeders and the perches that I have out, sometimes it's more beneficial if you want a particular shot is to strip away everything except for one feeder and one perch, and that way you're much more guaranteed to get the birds landing where you expect them to and get the shot that you want. So I'll leave you with a few of my favourite shots that I've got from my hide. Now I hope you found the tips in this video really useful, and if you've got anything that you do that I've not mentioned, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know down below in the comments, and if you've got any pictures that you've taken, send them to me as well over my Facebook. I'd really love to see them, or link me to your Instagram account. If you've enjoyed this video, do let me know down below in the comments, or nip over to my Instagram account, that's @DoakdenPhotography. Leave me a message there, and you can also see lots of my pictures. Now if you like what I do on the channel, you can help support me by visiting my Teespring store. Now you don't have to spend loads of money, because you can just click like, subscribe and the bell notifications. That helps the channel just as much. Now watch out for next week's video. That goes live at 4 o'clock on Sunday, but all that's left now is to say stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Now this type of cedar is, cedar? Waiting for the sun. The sun's coming out, it's going in, it's going out, it's coming in. There's two pieces of wood that have formed an, so I'm gonna call that one a day.